January 1st, Japan assumes the presidency of the G7, an international organization consisting of the world's largest economies. The G7 summit, an annual meeting of the 7 nations, is scheduled for May 19th in Hiroshima, Japan. International pressure begins to mount on Japan as they are the only country of the G7 that does not recognize same-sex marriage. February 1st, Prime Minister Fumio Kishida says that the legalization of same-sex marriage is an issue that should be looked into very carefully. He emphasized that the reason why same-sex couples are not allowed to freely marry is that this is an issue that will change our views on family, values, and society. He continued to reiterate that Japan's ban on same-sex marriage is not a form of discrimination, since the Japanese constitution already grants its citizens with equal rights and protection. February 4th, 3 days later, Prime Minister Kishida fires a government staffer who made derogatory remarks about LGBT couples. The staffer said that he would not want to live next to or look at people in same-sex relationships, and that permitting gay marriage in Japan would lead to many abandoning the country, among other comments. Prime Minister Kishida claimed the remarks were outrageous and completely incompatible with his government's policies. Due to this incident, international and domestic pressure further increased on Kishida's administration regarding the LGBT matter. Before we continue this timeline of events, I'd like to thank you two for essentially writing the script of this video. All I've done is add the fancy edits, so thanks again, and I'll leave his Twitter account in the description below. March 6th, Japan's largest opposition party, the Constitutional Democratic Party, submits the LGBT Understanding Bill, which is an amendment to already existing legislation which will include an understanding of the LGBT community by criminalizing discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. April 11th, the United States ambassador to Japan, Rahm Emanuel, demands Japan and Prime Minister Kishida's government to recognize same-sex marriage. He said the day beforehand in a speech held at the Research Institute of Japan in Tokyo that there is no difference between same-sex marriage and heterosexual marriage, and that Japan should properly acknowledge any relationship between two people in love. The pressure has certainly mounted. April 23rd, Tokyo Rainbow Pride begins with the aim to pressure Prime Minister Kishida and the Liberal Democratic Party to legalize same-sex marriage. A large portion of the attendees are foreigners waving American and EU flags, with the US ambassador also in attendance. It should be noted that the majority of the event's sponsors are foreign Western corporations. Between May 1st and May 11th, the Liberal Democratic Party and the Constitutional Democratic Party begin negotiations for the revision of the LGBT bill, with more pressure mounting from the international community, as seen on May 12th, where the ambassadors of Argentina, Finland, Australia, Canada, Belgium, the European Union, the United States of America, Ireland, the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, Iceland, and Germany making a joint video statement, once again demanding the Japanese government to legalize same-sex marriage. May 15th, the LDP settles on a revision of the original bill, the new wording of the bill stating that there should be no unfair discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity, meaning that even if the bill were to pass, it would be up to the Japanese Supreme Court to decide what unfair discrimination means. As Japan's courts are notorious for being extremely conservative, even if the revised bill passes, there will be little chance for members of the LGBT community to even win a court case. Though who's to say that the bill will even pass the Japanese parliament in the first place? While the LDP's junior coalition partner, Komeito, approved the bill on May 17th and the LDP leadership approved the bill on May 16th, there was an internal rebellion within the LDP in an attempt to stop the bill's approval, as well as the fact that many of the opposition parties are now furious that the original bill has been so watered down, which brings us to the various factions within the Japanese parliament who we need to discuss, as well as the now 3 different bills being proposed at the time of writing. The Japanese parliament is currently comprised of 9 different parties. The largest of the opposition parties is the Constitutional Democratic Party, which along with the Japanese Communist Party and the Social Democratic Party submitted the original bill, which criminalizes discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. The opposition parties are absolutely adamant that their bill be the one which passes. Rumors have circulated that the aforementioned US Ambassador Rahm Emanuel tried to convince the leader of the CDP to support the LDP's revised bill in order to maintain some sort of unity in the Japanese parliament on the LGBT issue, though it seems the opposition still wishes to pursue the original wording of the bill, though there is another version of the bill currently being discussed for submission. The Democratic Party for the People and Japan Innovation Party criticized the 2 other versions of the bill for lack of protection against cisgender people and especially of women. Their bill specifically bans transgender women from entering into women's restrooms, bathhouses, and hot springs. Should the DPP and JIP submit their version of the bill, it would further delegitimize the bill being put forward by the LDP. Which brings us to the governing party itself. The watered-down bill which changes the wording, which says that there should be no unfair discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity. While the LDP's junior coalition partner, Komeito, supports the watered-down bill, the LDP as a party is divided between 8 different factions which have split themselves between the 2 sides of the issue. While the official party stance is in opposition to the progression of LGBT rights, as echoed by Prime Minister Kishida, who earlier stated that the party will defend Japan's traditional marriage and family values, there is a vocal minority which supports the progression of LGBT rights. The pro-LGBT factions includes powerful members such as Endo Toshiaki, Tomomi Inada, and Hagiura Koichi. These members were instrumental in the initial approval of the bill within the LDP, as seen during the LDP meeting, which discusses whether the watered-down bill should be presented to the Japanese parliament. While the majority disapproved of the bill, Toshiaki used his powers as committee chairperson to approve the legislation in a minority vote. Now you might be asking where the anti-LGBT factions were in all of this. Despite being in the majority, how is it that a blunder like this happened in the first place? Unfortunately, since the assassination of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe last year, the more conservative factions of the LDP have been unable to unite behind such a charismatic and unifying figure like Abe, though it should be noted that there are dozens of LDP MPs in both houses of the Japanese parliament publicly opposing the bill. With this many members within the LDP rebelling and with multiple bills now being presented, the passage of a unifying LGBT anti-discrimination bill seems more unlikely day by day. Though I know you might be asking, why doesn't the LDP just pass their bill if they have the majority in parliament? There is one factor which underpins any legislation which tries to protect the rights of minorities, and that is the notion of bipartisanship. If there is bipartisan support, Japan as a country will at least have the appearance of being pro-LGBT. If the parties have rallied together to support the bill in one sweeping majority, not only does the governing party get to boast about its leadership, but Japan will be seen as a country which supports the rights of LGBT people on the international stage, especially at the G7, which is currently being held now. If it's a bill being pushed solely by the governing party itself, it's a bad look for the LDP, which will have the appearance of having rushed this legislation in order to virtue signal at the G7. Not to mention that with this many LDP members rebelling, LDP leadership is certainly treading carefully with what it does next. They wouldn't want the party itself to split over the issue. In summary, there are a few lessons we can take from this as Christians in regard to this bill. The first is something that I have been echoing for a while now. That is, Japan is a country with not only a large non-believing population, but also a country which has a high rate of self-deletion and many lonely, unmarried people. This is a country which is well positioned to receive the gospel of Jesus Christ. Should Japan become a more culturally Christian country in the future, this sort of chicanery wouldn't happen. It certainly wouldn't surprise me considering the growth of Christianity in neighboring China. While it is an Asian country with a lack of any historically significant Christian communities, it is still expected to become the largest Christian country by population by 2030. We should pray the same occur in Japan. Which brings us to my second point, which is that we should pray for Japan over the passage of this bill. Japan is still one of the only properly conservative countries in the world. It is a testament that a country can still be successful economically while also respecting the traditions passed on from previous generations. With the passage of this bill, the whole social order of Japan would begin to collapse, just as it has done in Western countries such as the United States, Canada, Australia, and the United Kingdom. The third is particularly relevant for Christians and conservatives alike. The reason why the supposedly conservative LDP has even entertained such a bill in the first place is that there was infighting among the conservative factions within the party, along with the lack of conservatives in party leadership, which allowed the more progressive factions of the party to take control and push for this legislation. For us in our own countries, whether it be the Republican Party, the British Conservative Party, or the Australian Liberal Party, it is the responsibility of Christians and conservatives alike to prevent these conservative institutions from going further to the left. Splitting off and creating new movements and parties is just going to allow the existing institutions to become less conservative. Thanks again to you two for effectively writing the script for this video. Again, his Twitter is linked in the description below. I hope you found that video helpful. This is not usually the type of content that I make, but I wanted to make this type of video because the anime that we watch could drastically change if this sort of legislation pulls through. Yes, culture is downstream from politics, but at the same time, politics also influences culture. I hope I speak for a lot of people when I say that the reason why we look to anime as a medium is because Western media has become so bad and so woke that it's become unbearable to watch. Hence why we look to anime, which draws from a rich Japanese tradition and focuses solely on storytelling. If you'd like to see one of my reviews of one such anime which fits this description, here's my take on Clannad right here.